1 week from today, Mornings with Richard Cross will be in Jackson for Hobnob, one of the 3 annual meetings tied to the Mississippi Economic Council. To talk more about that and the other things that are happening at MEC, we welcome in Scott Waller. He is the CEO and president of the Mississippi Economic Council. Always a pleasure to visit. Good morning, Scott.
Richard, how are you today?
Doing well.
Good.
Thanks for joining us. Hobnob getting close.
It's getting close. A week away. It's really hard to believe it's already October again, and we're in this. I remember last year I came in and talked to you, and you kind of tripped me up because it was on Halloween, and I didn't even catch the fact that we should be dressing up. And a couple of things scary, I guess, about that day right now. But anyway, things are good. How are you doing?
Life is good. We got lots going on, and looking forward to being with you and all the MEC crew next week, and perhaps the last meeting where this is going to be just an MEC meeting. We've been talking about a merger for a long time. How close are we?
It's not just close. It's done. There we go. We are really getting ready, and that's one of the great things that we'll be doing. Next week is we'll be unveiling a lot of information about what the new organization will be doing, how it will be structured, and the look of what we'll be doing as the Mississippi Business Alliance. Earlier this month, we filed the official paperwork to form the organization. We've already had kind of an organization committee meeting to set the board, set bylaws, set leadership, executive leadership of the organization. So things are falling into place just like we expected, and we're very excited about it. You'll get to hear from John McKay, who will be serving as the president and CEO of the Mississippi Business Alliance on Thursday of next week, about his thoughts and visions for the organization. I'm looking very forward to my new role of serving as president of the foundation and really focusing on some key issues related to workforce development and other policy issues as we go forward. So we really are excited about what's happening. I think it's going to be a great benefit to the members of the current organizations to have a single voice. But more importantly, I think it's going to be a bigger benefit to the state of Mississippi for the business community to be united and focusing on how we move our state forward in the future.
All right, so remind us kind of the role of each of the 3 organizations. So you have the Mississippi Economic Council, which we've talked a lot about as kind of the state's chamber of commerce and the biggest cheerleader for economic development in Mississippi. But then you've got MMA, the Mississippi Manufacturers Association, and BIPAC. So individually, what was the role for each of these 3 organizations?
So if you look at how we were structured, MEC's kind of, as you said, we are the state chamber of commerce. We are very strong in advocacy as it deals on kind of year-to-year issues, but we are also very important in helping drive a kind of a vision for growing our economy. Back in 2022, we released a report called Securing Mississippi's Future, Vision for Economic Growth. It was really a third alliteration of what we started, MEC started in the early 2000s, called Blueprint Mississippi. In other words, it was designed to be a vision plan for the state to look at things that would help grow and create a more economic development, strong environment for us to go forward with. MMA, it represents our manufacturers. Even though some manufacturers were a member of MEC, they really focused on the manufacturing sector, which is a huge sector in our economy. It still drives our economy, right. The most important sector in our economy, non-agriculture sector in our economy. So, their focus has been on making sure that the regulatory taxes, things of that nature, were in place so that manufacturers could be successful. And then BIPAC brings the political involvement element to it. Most chambers across the country, in fact, all chambers across the country, are involved in at least having input and say we got to have strong political leadership that's pro-business as we go forward, and that's the role BIPAC had been playing for a number of years. So when you bring all of these things under one umbrella and as the Mississippi Business Alliance, I think what we're going to have is we're going to have the ability to really impact not only making sure that the political leaders understand the importance of being pro-business and are held accountable for that, understanding the importance of what's happening right now as it relates to whether it's legislative policy, regulatory policy, primarily at the state level. There is we do get involved in some federal issues, but for the most part, we focus our attention at the state level. And then the overall making sure that we continue to focus our attention on what Mississippi needs next as it relates to our economy. So having those three elements in a single organization, I think, is going to make us very, very strong. A lot of states across the country do it this way. It's something that we felt like was a model we could follow. And the leadership that we have coming up, and particularly, as I mentioned, John McKay and his role as the CEO of the new organization, has been a nonprofit professional for a number of years. He understands our state. He's from here. The fact that I can focus my attention toward something I'm very passionate about, and that's improving our workforce development across the state. And then Derek's expertise as it relates to political involvement. Derek Easley, who is the current CEO of BIPAC,
right?
That's a pretty, not trying to be overconfident here, but that's a pretty strong team when you think about who we've got running that. And then you got the business support of the major companies across this state to help us get that done.
You mentioned the workforce development piece, and we've talked so much about that with you and with all of the other players in terms of workforce development. It's something that the governor has been consistently vociferous about. I don't know if I was planning on using the word vociferous this morning, but he's been a huge advocate of growing the workforce in Mississippi. We know Dr. Courtney Taylor and others have just worked tirelessly to encourage people to get involved, to seek the training opportunities that are there. But I saw the story. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, this grant on the coast of about $6 million that's going to go directly into workforce training for the shipbuilding yards, whether you're talking about Ingalls or Bollinger or Marine. And I thought it was kind of a sobering number. Lance and I talked about this a little bit. They've got to hire 2,500 people at minimum. And that's got to happen quickly. And, you think about having to hire a new manager, or you're hiring a new office assistant, and sometimes that process takes longer than you want it to. You talk about hiring over 2,000 people that need to be highly skilled and ready to hit the ground running. That's a pretty daunting task. And that's just in one segment of kind of the workforce development piece in Mississippi. And
that's a year-over-year thing as well. I mean, they're constantly looking in that industry, looking for employees because the work is there, the need is there. So you've got to be prepared. So I'll say this. I'll start by talking about, going back to when even Governor Reeves was lieutenant governor. He and I had multiple conversations about how do you structure things to help improve workforce development, whether it's giving students an opportunity to do something as simple as take ACT work keys to determine whether or not, their work readiness and where they need to be helped as high school students and how that translates into post-secondary education. Then you look at the creation of the Office of Workforce Development, which is Accelerate Mississippi, and now Dr. Taylor being in that role. I mean, that was started in 2021. Ryan Miller came in and actually laid a great vision for the department. Courtney's followed that and really started to do the tactical work that's necessary for this thing to really be successful. I was very proud of our state. On Tuesday, I was in Washington, D.C. for the announcement of the Strata Education Foundation's report called State Opportunity Index. Mississippi was featured. Dr. Taylor was there, was on a panel discussing things that we are doing in this state to improve workforce development. And you think about all of the things we've talked about, how Mississippi's gotten attention for the improvements in education and the economic development that's taking place. Workforce development's right there with them, and the work that Dr. Taylor and her team are doing at Accelerate it's very important in that process. So I was fortunate enough to be asked to serve on an advisory council in putting this State Opportunity Index together. So for the past couple of years, I've been working directly with this group. But I wasn't the one that said, hey, we need to get Mississippi up here to talk about it. It was Strata that made that decision. So we've got a project that we announced last week, and we're going to expand it, talking about it at Hobnob, called Work Future Institute. And really, if we have time after the break, I'd love to just get into a little bit of details of how that public sector will get private sector support in continuing to grow workforce development.
We'll talk about that coming up, and another piece of the workforce development conversation. So it's about getting Mississippians that are here ready to work, but we also have a finite number of Mississippians. What about state population growth? Is that something that is on the agenda, attracting people to Mississippi to fill some of these jobs? We've got more coming up with you.
Has to be a priority.
Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi, streaming at supertalk.fm and SuperTalk TV. Good to be with you this morning. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Thanks for joining us. MRC is presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. Scott Waller is my guest, President and CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. I mentioned this before the break, and talking about population. Mississippi has been at about 2.9 million in terms of the population for a while. And I mean, I suppose that number in and of itself is okay, but when you look at surrounding states, Louisiana is a state that has lost about 2% of its population in the last 3 years. Mississippi has lost a little less than 1% of its population. There are lots of reasons for that. I mean, some of it is older population, but it also has to do with people moving into the state. When you look at surrounding states, Arkansas, and these are numbers as of the end of 2023. The numbers lag a little bit. So Arkansas is up about 2% over a 3-year period. Tennessee's up about 3%. Alabama's up almost 2%. Georgia's up 3%. South Carolina's up 5%. North Carolina's up 4%. Florida's growing at a rate of about 5% a year. How important is it for Mississippi to capture more of that population growth, one, and how do you go about that, two?
Well, it's important that we capture what we can, and I think there are a couple of things we're doing. Back in 2022, we did some research. We labeled it the Talent Initiative, and the idea was to look at what was important as it related to talent retention, and that means keeping particularly students coming out of post-secondary education in the state, and talent attraction, getting more people to move to the state. And the bottom line is this: you can talk to anybody and say, well, these large cities have these amenities, and that's part of it. I think it's important that we have something for people, particularly younger people, to do. But at the end of the day, there were two major factors. That's the economic factor. Is there a job that pays well that I can go to and work in that state or stay in the state and work in? And number two, public safety. So those two things drove kind of where everybody kind of put their attention as it related to what was needed. So when we think about this, we've got to think about two factors. One, we got to make sure we're creating jobs that pay well. We're creating opportunities for Mississippians. Our post-secondary education needs to be focused on the jobs we have here in the state. And I'm not saying that other degrees aren't important, and people should be able to major in what they want to major in. That is true. However, the focus, particularly from a funding perspective, and that's one of the things we've kind of outlined in our Work Future project that I mentioned just before the break. We've got to make sure that we understand what businesses need, what the skill sets are for the people that go to work there, and then kind of focus our attention on making sure those skills are in place, much like the large grant that was announced that you talked about yesterday and earlier today about the shipbuilding training that's taking place on the coast. Those are the things that we need to be putting our attention toward, because if we're actually meeting the needs of businesses that we have here, that creates the opportunity for those businesses to grow. It also creates the opportunity to show that we can also get the training for those companies looking to locate here. So those two things play on each other. And then the other element is there was a lot of discussion about how post-secondary education works, primarily for the folks coming out of K-12. But post-secondary education is there for adult learners as well. So how do we upskill? How do we reskill people? So all of those things are a big part of that. And that's why, again, I feel so good about where we are with what is being created. And I say being created because the Office of Workforce Development, Accelerate Mississippi, didn't start until 2021. It's 4 years old. And look at the progress it's already made in just 4 years. We've got the opportunity to really turn this thing in. What people like to refer to as the Mississippi Miracle, and a lot of people are saying the word miracle doesn't really work because a lot of hard work went into making that happen with improving our K-12 education. Same thing's happening in workforce development. It is a lot of hard work that's going to pay dividend over the next 10 to 15 years like Mississippi's never seen.
Yeah, you talk about the big city piece of it, and I don't know that part of it's going to change, right? I mean, Jackson is what Jackson is the capital city and the largest city in the state. But, I mean, when you compare that to Nashville, Birmingham, Atlanta, Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, Raleigh, and North Carolina, all the big cities in Florida, we don't have that.
No, we don't.
And I don't know that piece of it's going to change. And so is it selling small to medium size town living? And how hard of a sell is that?
I think for probably someone that's...
I mean, we live here and think it's great.
We live here and think it's great. I think someone coming out of college that maybe is 21, 22 years old, it may be a harder sell. But over time, understanding, I grew up in a very, very small town in Mississippi. I understand the value of the small town and all that. And to Jackson, I'm bullish on Mayor Horn. I think that he is going to really try to do everything he can to help turn the city of Jackson around. And you need a strong metro, there's no question. But I think Mississippi's advantage is cost of living. The family is a pull for a lot of people to come back to the state after they've been out, gone and come back. And so I think there are a lot of things that we can really determine how we go about doing it. But I think when you compare cost of living, not just state to state, but region to region, we've got some big advantages that we can hopefully take advantage of those. But the whole key is making sure we have those jobs available that pay well, that give people an opportunity to work in the field they want to work in. That's the biggest thing as we do that. You put those in place and everything else takes care of itself.
Scott, how micro can you get in terms of workforce development and workforce training? And what I mean by that is making it regionally specific. We talk about the need for shipbuilders on the coast. You think about the manufacturing piece that's in the Golden Triangle and the need for people to be able to work in those factories, to have executive level jobs within those factories. You mentioned Ryan Miller earlier. He and I have talked a lot, and there's a focus in North Mississippi on tech development, especially in the healthcare and defense industries. How specific can you be in terms of workforce training, or does it have to be a kind of a wide net catch-all?
It really needs to be more on the specific side, in my opinion. And I think in Ryan's, Ryan just finished their kind of strategic plan for that area, and he and I had an opportunity to talk about that a couple of times, and he's kind of focused on how do you do that. I think when if you see the areas of the state that have been successful, the Golden Triangle, the Northeast Mississippi and the Pool Alliance area, Tupelo, they've taken a regional approach of what is it that they need and what are they trying to attract. And I think that's where you find success if you can really focus on that attention. Again, not trying to say that all majors aren't important at the post-secondary level, but some are more important is maybe a better way of looking at it. And we got to focus our attention on how we do that. So one of the things that we've talked about as it related to our Work Future project that we announced last week, and we're going to spend some time at Hobnob. We've actually got a panel coming in to talk about workforce development and kind of how it affects new companies coming to the state, existing companies who are growing, and then the state's role through Accelerate or kind of what we'll be looking at as it relates to the panel there and getting a little deeper into the kind of the what we want to do with the Work Future Institute. The idea behind the Work Future Institute is to do exactly what you just said, Richard, and that is have businesses become involved in the process so that they can make sure that whether it's Accelerate, our K-12 system, our community college system, our IHL system, understand what the needs are, what the training is necessary to make sure that we have the workforce for the jobs we have here. And again, that sets the table to create and bring in new jobs. So the private sector involvement in helping those that are handling this process of workforce development is vital. For us to be successful, they have got to be part of this. I heard there's a lady that I did a lot of work with through the years with U.S. Chamber. She's now with another organization. She was one of the speakers at the conference I mentioned earlier, and she said something very prophetic to me. She said, "You can't expect education to change if the business community doesn't get involved and let them know what they need." And I think that's where Work Future Institute is going to be a vital part of making sure that the education leaders across the state, the workforce development leaders across the state, the political leaders across the state understand what businesses are needing as it relates to workforce development. If we do that, we will be successful.
Well, and this is something that we've talked about before, and I think it's such an interesting example. We saw it a few months ago with William Carey University in Hattiesburg in a partnership with Howard Industries. Howard said, "Hey, this is what we need," and William Carey said, "Well, let's train people to do specifically this." And I thought it was pretty innovative thinking from the leadership at William Carey and that partnership, and hopefully we'll see more of those.
That's exactly what we've got to be doing. So again, we're going to be talking about that at Hobnob next Thursday. If you haven't already, I encourage you go to MEC.com. I want to say MSBA. That's our new acronym for our new organization. MEC.ms, and there's all the information. It's not too late to be part of the program on Thursday. We hope to see you.
Register online, msmec.com. You can see all the info about Hobnob. We'll see you next week, Scott. Thanks.
Thank you so much.